Good morning. Our topic for today is all about the 8.1 norm referenced grading. What is the norm reference grading? The most commonly used grading system falls under the category of norm referenced grading. Thus, in this system, a grade of 80 means that the student performed better than or same as 80% of the class. At first glance, there appears to be no problem with this type of grading system, as it simply describes the performance of a student with a reference to a particular group of learners. The following example shows some of the difficulties associated with norm reference grading. For example, consider the following two sets of score in an English, one class for two sections of 10 students each. For A, 30, 40, 50, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, and 85. For B, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, and 100. In the first class, the student who got a raw score of 75 would get a grade of 80%, while in the second class, the same grade of 80% would correspond to a raw score of 90. Indeed, if the tests used for the two classes are the same, it would be a rather unfair system of grading. A wise student would opt enroll in a class A since it's easier to get higher grades in that class than in the other class, which is the class B. So, this grading system rests on the assumption that the level of student performance will not vary much from class to class. So, on the other hand, the norm referenced measurement helps social works educator determine which students achieve the highest when compared to other students. The previous example illustrates one difficulty with using a norm references grading system. This problem is called the problem of equivalency. So, does a grade of 80 in one class represent the same achievement level as a grade of 80 in another class of the same subject? This problem is similar to the problem of trying to compare a valedictorian from remote rural high school with a valedictorian from some very popular university in the urban area. Does and expect the same level of competence for those two valedictorians? As we have seen, norm reference grading systems are based on a pre-established formula grading the percentage or ratio of students within a whole class who will be assigned each grade or mark. It is therefore known as in advance what percent of the students would pass or fail a given course. For this reason, many opponents to norm reference grading aver that such a grading system does not advance the cause of education and contradict the principle of individual differences. For example, a teacher may establish a grading policy where B, the top 15% of students will receive a mark of excellence or outstanding, which in class of 100 enrolled students will be 15 persons, such as a grading policy is illustrated in below. For 1.0 excellent is the top 15% percentage of class. 1.50 is good, next 15% of the class. 2.0 is average or fair, next 45% of class. 3.0 is poor or pass, next 15% of class. 5.0 is failure, so the bottom 10% of the class. The underlying assumption in norm reference grading is the student have ability as reflected in their raw scores that obey the normal distribution. The objectives is to find out the best performers in this group. Norm reference grade system are most often used for screening selected student population in condition where it known that not all students can advance due to limitations such as available places, job, or other controlling factors. For example, in the Philippine setting, since not all high school students can actually advance to college or university level because of financial constraint, the norm reference grading system can be applied. Example, in class of 100 students, the mean score in a test is 70 with a standard deviation of 5. Construct a norm reference grading table that would have a 7 grade scales and such that students scoring between plus or minus 1 standard deviation from the mean receive an average grade. For the solution, the following intervals of raw scores to grade equivalents are computed. For the raw score, below 55, 55 to 60, 61 to 65, 66 to 75, 76 to 80, 81 to 85. Grade equivalent and percentage: fail 1%, marginal pass 4%, pass 11%, average 68%, above average 11%, very good 4%, excellent 1%. Only a few of the teachers who use norm reference grading apply. It will complete consistency. When a teacher is faced with a particularly bright class, most of the time he does not penalize good students for having the bad luck to enroll in a class with cohort of the other very capable student, even if the grading system says he should fail a certain percentage of the class. On the other hand, it is also unlikely that a teacher would reduce the mean grade for a class when he observed a large proportion of poor performing students just to save them from failure. A serious problem with norm reference grading is that no matter what class level of knowledge and ability, and no matter how much they learn, a predictable proportion of students will receive each grade. Since it is essential purpose is to sort students into categories based on relative performance. Norm reference grading and evaluation is often used to weed out students for limited places in selective educational program. Norm reference grading indeed promotes competition to the extent that students would rather not help fellow students because by doing so, the mean of the class would be raised and consequently, it would be more difficult to get higher grades. Similarly, student would be everything or legal to pull down the score of everyone else in order to lower the mean and thus assure him or her of higher grades on the curve. A more subtle problem with norm reference grading is that a strict correspondence between the evaluation methods used and the course instructional goals is not necessary to yield the required grades distribution. The specific learning objectives of norm reference classes are often kept hidden, in part out of concern that instruction not give away the test of the teacher's priorities, since the might tend to skew the curve. Since norm reference grading is replete with problems, what alternatives have been devised for grading the students? For the criterion reference grading, criterion reference grading system are based on a fixed criterion measure. There is a fixed target in order to obtain a passing grade in a course regardless of how the other student in the class perform. The scale does not change regardless of the quality or lack, therefore, of the student. For example, in a class of 100 students using table below, no one might get a grade of excellent if no one scores a 98 above or 85 above. Depending on the criterion used, there is no fixed percentage of students who are expected to get the various grade in the criterion reference grading system. So this is the criterion reference grading system. The 1.0 excellent is to 98 to 100 or 86 to 100. Next is 1.5 is good, 88 to 97 or 80 to 84. For the 2.0 is fair, 75 to 87 or 70 to 79. 3.0 is poor or pass, 65 to 74 or 60 to 69. 5.0 is failure, below 65 or below 60. Criterion reference systems are often used in situations where the teachers are agreed on the meaning of a standard of performance in a subject but the quality of the students is unknown or uneven, where the work involves student collaboration or teamwork, and where there is no external driving factor such as needing to systematically reduce a pool of eligible students. Note that in criterion reference grading systems, students can help a fellow student in a group work without necessarily worrying about lowering his grade in that course. This is because the criterion reference grading system does not require the mean of the class or as a basis of distributing grades among the students. It is therefore an ideal system to use in collaborative group work. When students are evaluated based on predefined criterion, they are free to collaborate with one another and with the instructor. With criterion reference grading, a rich learning environment is to everyone's advantage. So the students are rewarded for finding ways to help each other and for contributing to class and small group discussion. Since the criterion measure used in criterion reference grading is a measure that ultimately rests it's the teacher. It is logical to ask what prevents teachers who use criterion so low that everyone can pass with ease. There is variety of measure used to prevent this situation from ever happening in the grading system. First, the criterion should not be based on only one teacher's opinion or standards. It should be collaboratively arrived at. A group of teachers teaching the same subject must set the criterion together. Second, once the criterion is established, it must be made public and open to public scrutiny so that it does not become arbitrary and subject to the whim and 8.34 Questions in Grading by Marinilla D. Giovannicchi, 2007, of the Center for Teaching Effectiveness of the University of Texas in Austin poses for introducing questions relative to grading. We share these questions here in this section and the corresponding opinion of Ms. Giovannicchi for your own reflection. First, should grade reflect absolute achievements level or achievement relative to others in the same class? Second, should grade reflect achievements only or non-academic components such as attitude, speed, and intelligence? 3. Should grade report status achieved or amount of growth? Any question? Thank you for your listening.
4 questions in grading. Marnila Diz Vinci 2007 of the Center for Teaching Effectiveness of the University of Texas in Austin possess 4 intriguing questions relative to grading. Number 1. Should grades reflect absolute achievement level or achievement relative to others in the same class? Number 2. Should grades reflect achievement only or non-academic components such as attitude, speed, and diligence? Number 3. Should grades report status achieved or amount of growth? Number 4. How can several grades on diverse skills combine to give a single mark? What should go into a student's grade? The grading system an instructor selects reflects his or her educational philosophy. There is no right or wrong systems, only systems which accomplish different objectives. The following are questions which an instructor may want to answer when choosing what will go into a student's grade. First, should grades reflect absolute achievement level or achievement relative to others in the same class? This is often referred to as the controversy between norm reference versus criterion reference grading. In norm reference grading system, the letter grade a student receives is based on his or her standing in the class. A certain percentage of those at the top receive A's, a specified percent of the next highest grades receive B's, and so on. Such a system also takes into account circumstances beyond a student's control which might adversely affect grades, such as poor teaching, bad tests, or unexpected problems arising from the entire class. Presumably, this would affect all the students equally, so all performance would drop but the relative standing would stay the same. A student who has earned an average amount in a class of geniuses will probably know more than a student who is average in the class of low ability. The other most common grading system is the criterion reference system. In this case, the instructor sets a standard of performance against which the student's actual performance is measured. All students achieving a given level receive the grade assigned to that level regardless of how many in the class receive the same grade. An outsider evaluator looking at the grade knows only that a student has reached a certain level or set of objectives. Criterion reference grading does not provide selection information. There is no way to tell from the grading who the best students are. Only the certain students have achieved certain level. Second, should grades reflect achievement only or non-academic components such as attitude, speed, and diligence? It is very common practice to incorporate such things as turning in assignments on time into the overall grade in a course. Instructors must use real question when incorporating such value judgment to final grade assignment. 2 steps instructors should take are: first, to make students aware of this possibility well in advance of graded assignment. Second, to make clear what behavior is included in such qualities as prompt compilation of work and neatness or completeness. Third, should grades report status achieved or amount of growth? This is particularly difficult question to answer. In many beginning classes, the background of the students is so varied that some students can achieve the end objectives with little or no trouble, while others with weak backgrounds will work twice as hard and still achieve only half as much. There are many problems with growth measures as basis for change, most of them being related to statistical artifacts. Fourth, how can several grades on diverse skills combine to give a single mark? The basic answer is that they can't really. It would be most desirable to be able to give multiple marks, one for each of the variety of skills which are learned. It would complicate an already complicated task. There might not be enough evidence to reliably grade any one skill. The halo effect of good performance in one area could spill over into others. Test standardization. It is a process by which teacher or researcher may test or validated an item analyzed. After a thorough process of validation, the characteristics of the test are being established. Standardized tests are psychometric instruments whose scoring system are developed by norming the test using national sample of test takers, centering the scoring formula to assure that the likely score distribution describe a normal curve when graphed, and then using a resulting scoring system uniformly in a manner of resembling a criterion reference approach. Next, cumulative and averaging systems of grading. In the Philippines, there are two types of grading system. We have averaging system and cumulative grading system. In averaging system, the grade of a student in the particular grading period equals to the average of the grades obtained in the prior grading periods and the current grading periods. We have example are prelim 85. We will add it together, 80 plus 9 divided into 3, and the result. In cumulative grading system, period grade, which is assumed to have the cumulative of the previous grade. Example, students' grades. So, paano natin isolve so ito yung formula. Grade plus 2/3 of 10 is equals to 30. Plus 23.33 is 83. So the final grading system is 83.
Good day, everyone. So this report is the continuation report of Miss Serion. And I am Miss Noemi Sisalonga. So my topic is all about policy guidelines on classroom assessment for the K-12 basic education, DepEd Order number 8, series of 2015. Below are some of the highlights of the K-12 grading system which was implemented starting school year 2015-2016. They are all lifted from DepEd Order number 8 series of 2015. Weights of the components for the different grade levels and subjects. The student grade is a function of three components. First is the written work, which is our written activities. Second is performance task, which is our performance in our classroom. Third is quarterly assessment, which is our exams. The percentage vary across clusters of subject. For the first cluster, we have languages, Araling Panlipunan or AP, and Edukasyon sa Pagpapahalaga or ASP. Belong to one cluster and have the same grade percentages for written work, performance, task, and quarterly assessment. Next is science and math, are another cluster with the same components and percentages. Last is music, art, physical education, and health, or RMAPE, make up the third cluster with the same components percentages. Therefore, not all the subjects have the same components and percentages. So, for our first cluster, which is our language, AP, ASP have the same grade percentage, and for science and math have the same components, and last is MAPE have the same components. Among the three components, performance tasks are given the largest percentage. So here is our table. Okay, for the grade 1 to grade 10. So here is our components. We have written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment. So for the first cluster, which is languages, AP, and ASP, for the written work, have 30%, performance task, 50%, quarterly assessment is 20%. For the second cluster, which are science and math, for the written work is 40%, performance task is 40%, quarterly assessment is 20%. For the last, which is MAPI and EPP and TLE, for the written work is 20%, performance task is 60%, quarterly assessment is 20%. So as we can see, performance task given the most largest percentage. Therefore, it is very important that we are performing well in our classroom because performance have the largest percentage. Next is for weights of the components for senior high school. For grade 11 to 12, we have also written works, performance task, quarterly assessment. So here is the core subjects, have 25% for written work, performance task is 50%, quarterly assessment is 25%. For the academic track, all other subjects for written works is 25%, performance task is 45%, quarterly assessment is 30%. For work immersion, research, business enterprises, simulation, exhibit, performance, for written works is 35%, performance task is 40%, quarterly assessment is 25%. For the TVL Sports, Arts, and Design track, all other subjects in work immersion, research, exhibit, performance, for written work is 20%, performance task is 60%, quarterly assessment is 20%. So, same po doon sa grade 1 to grade 10 na components. Performance task given the most largest percentage po pa rin, and to be followed by the written works. Next is steps in grade computation. Based on the same DepEd Order 8 series of 2015, here are the steps to follow in computing grades. So here it is. Step number 1, get the total score for each component. So here is the example. So we're going to collect all the written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment. So ito po sa written work. We have 7 written work here, and learner's row score and highest possible score. So first is written work 1 to 7. So we have written activities or 7 activities for written work. So for this learner's row score, this is the score of a student, and the highest possible score is the total of the activity. So this is the score. For the learner's row score, for the written work number 1, 18 over 20. Next is 22 over 25, 20 over 20, 17 over 20, 23 over 25, 26 over 30, 19 over 20. So for the learner's row score, they got 145, and the highest possible score is 160. Next is for the performance task. Same procedure for the written work. We're going to collect all the performance task activity, and for the performance task number 1, they got 12 over 15, 13 over 15, 19 over 25, 15 over 20, 16 over 20, 25 over 25. So learner row scored a total of 100, and the highest possible score is 120. Next is quarterly assessment, which is exams. Learner row score got 40 over 50. So for the step 2, divide the total row score by the highest possible score. Then multiply the quotient by 100%. So for the written work, percentage score, for the written work, they got kanina 145 over doon sa highest possible score, which is 160. So 145 divide 160 multiplied by 100%. Therefore, percentage score of written work is 90.63. Next is for the performance task. Percentage score is 100 doon po sa total kanina sa performance task sa table na, sa example na ginawa natin, and over 120 doon sa possible score and multiply by 100%. So the percentage score of performance task is 83.33. Last is percentage score for quarterly assessment, 40 over 90. So 40 divide 50 and multiply by 100%. Therefore, percentage score of quarterly assessment is 80%. For the step 3, convert percentage scores to weighted scores. Multiply the percentages scores by the weighted of the component indicated in Table 4 and Table 5. So, ito na. For the written work for English grade 4, so we're going to base na lamang po sa grade 4 student. So, as we can see kanina doon sa first table natin, doon sa mga components and percentage, so yun po yung babasihan natin. So, written work for English grade 4 is 30%. Diba? 30% yung andun kanina. So, weighted score is equals for the written work, kanina yung total natin is 90.63 multiplied by 30% and we're going to convert it into 0.33. So 90.63 times 0.30. So the weighted scores of written work is 27.19. Next is for the performance task for English grade 4 is 50%. So, the weighted score natin kanina doon sa performance task is 83.33. So, we're going to multiply it by 50% at i-convert lang natin into 0.50. So, the weighted score of our performance task is 41.67. Last is quarterly assessment for English grade 4 is 20%. So, weighted score kanina nakuha natin is 80. Multiply by 20% at i-convert natin siya again into 0.20. Therefore, the weighted score of quarterly assessment is 16. Step 4. Add the weighted scores of each component. The result will be the initial grade. So, we're going to get na ng initial grade. So, component weighted score, we're going to add the written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment. So, for the written work is 27.19. Performance task is 41.67. Quarterly assessment is 16. So, we're going to add yung tatlo. So, the total of 84.86. Therefore, the initial grade is 84.86. Step number 5. Transmute the initial grade using the transmutation. So what is this transmutation? We can see it in sa mga class record. Meron na doon ng mga transmuted grade. So 84.86, the transmuted grade is 90. So, yung transmuted grade ng 84.86 is 90. Therefore, the quarterly grade in English for the first quarter is 90. Next naman is for MAPE, quarterly grade for MAPE. Paano natin kukunin yung quarterly grade for MAPE? So, quarterly grade for music, for arts, PE and health, we're going to add yung 4 and divide by 4 because they have 4 subjects. So yung total niya, yun na po yung quarterly grade niya. Grade computation. What follows is a description of how grades are computed based on the Order 8 series of 2015. For kindergarten, there are no numerical grades in kindergarten. Descriptions of a learner's progress in the various learning areas are represented during checklist and student portfolios. This presented to the parents at the end of the quarter for discussions. Additional guidelines on the kindergarten will be issued. So for the kindergarten, they don't have numerical grades just like us or just like for the elementary and high school. They only have descriptions of the learner's progress in various learning areas. So next is for grade 1 to grade 10. The average of the quarterly grades produce the final grade. So we're going to get na for the final grade. We're going to get the final grade. So final grade for learning area. So we're going to add all the grade for first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter, and divide by 4, and the total, that is the final grade for learning area only for one subject. So the general average is computed by dividing the sum of all final grades by the total number of learning areas. Each learning areas has equal weight. So for the general average, sum of final grades of all learning areas and total number of learning areas in a grade level. So we're going to add all the final grades and divide by the total of learning areas in one grade level. So the final grade in each learning area and the general average are reported as whole numbers. Table 10 shows an example of the final grades of the different learning areas and general average of the grade 4 students. So here is the example. So this card is example for grade 1 to grade 10. So learning area have Filipino, English, Mathematics, Science, Araling Panlipunan, Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao, EPP, and MAPE. So the final grade is 85, 90, 83, 86, 91, 90, 81, 85. So we're going to add all of it and divide by the total of learning area. So we have total learning area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So final grade divide by 8. So the general average is 86. For grade 11 to 12, the 2 quarters determine the final grade in a semester. Table 10 shows an example in grade 11, second semester for the Accounting, Business, and Management ABM strand. So here is the example cards of grade 11, grade 12. So the subjects, core subjects have reading and writing skills, pagbasa at pagsusuri ng iba't ibang teksto tungo sa pananaliksik, statistic and probability, physical science, physical education and health. For applied and specialized subjects, have ICT, business math, organization and management, fundamental of accounting, business, and management. So here is the second semester final grade. Have 86, 86, 85, 88, 89, 82, 87, 83, 83. So we're going to add all of it and divide all the total subjects. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Therefore, all total of second semester final grade divide by 9. Therefore, the general average for this semester is 85. That's all. Thank you.
Promotion and retention at the end of the school year. And these are what DepEd Order Number 8, Section 2015 say that a final grade of 75 or higher in all learning areas allows the student to be promoted to be the next grade level. And here are the requirements and the decision for grades 1 to 3 learners. Number 1, final grades of at least 75 in all learning areas and the decision of this is to be promoted to the next grade level. And number 2, did not meet expectation in not more than 2 learning areas, and the decision of these must pass remedial classes for learning areas with failing mark to be promoted to the next grade level. And number 3, did not meet expectation in 3 or more learning areas, and the decision of this is retained in the same grade level. And for grade 4 to 10 learners, the requirements of and decision of these are: number 1, final grade of at least 75 in all learning areas. The decision of this is to be promoted to the next grade level. Number 2, did not meet expectation in not more than 2 learning areas, and the decision of this is must pass remedial classes for learning areas with failing mark to be promoted to the next grade level. And number 3, did not meet expectation in 3 or more learning areas, and the decision of this is retained in the same grade level. In otherwise, the student must be maintained in the same grade level.